Andrew Tate and Chase Demoor fought a couple days ago, and I think I've given it enough time to let it sit and simmer for a little bit. So I'm gonna give my little take. I'm just gonna throw my hand in the mix. You know what I mean, with kind of what my thoughts are with regards to the fight and everything regarding it. I don't really know that much about fighting specifically. I don't really know how to fight. So, take my opinions with the smallest grain of salt. But I just kind of want to throw my hat in the mix here because, why not, right? You know, I make a podcast every day. It only makes sense. I watch a lot of Andrew Tate stuff. It only makes sense that I just give my take, right? I'm just gonna give my take. It's not gonna be anything crazy. I'm not trying to rile up people or anything. Just trying to, give my thoughts as to how this situation is, and let me know if you agree, right? Let me know if I've missed something super important. But basically, this fight, right? Andrew Tate, Chase Demoor, the lead up to it, I actually found out about it because of like that big press conference where like it was funny because Chase was just insulting him, and Tate was like he didn't really care. He just was like nonchalant about the whole thing. I know nonchalant could be like a bit of like a brain dead word, but he like genuinely was like he genuinely like was trying to be nice, and it was like I don't know, it was like a passive aggressive, trying to defecate his character type of thing, which was the angle Andrew took it. So I was like, oh, this guy Chase is an idiot. Like, oh, he's gonna get absolutely destroyed by Andrew, right? But basically, what happened. I think I'm gonna backtrack for a second. Right? I'm gonna take a couple steps back. You know, Andrew Tate didn't have to take the fight, right? Like he has hundreds of millions of dollars. He's already kind of taken a step back a bit from the social media, like the social media on the podcast and stuff. He doesn't do as many as he used to when he was on that climb to fame, because I guess he realized that he's already said what he's needed to say, which is absolutely valid. So he could return to his, millions of dollar mansions and his 50 supercars and his truckloads of women, and just, continue living the life he's living without, doing any of this. But I guess he does these things, it's a stunt, but he does these things. The same thing as like why, it's the exact same reason as to why he got famous on the internet. He said himself that he didn't need to. He could have just shut up and he didn't have to go through all of the situations he went through. But I guess he values that, and it makes sense, right? He values that honor, that, never selling your soul, that always going and pursuing that thing you want to do, that feels right in your mind to do, regardless of the circumstance, regardless of what it means or where you are in your life. And that's kind of the mindset he abides by. And that's, I absolutely respect that, right? So with the fight, he didn't have to take it, right? He could have just been, in his mansion, chilling, right? He didn't have to do it. He didn't have to subject himself to this. He didn't really have to put his reputation on the line. But he did, because why? He wants to test himself. He wants to prove that he is still who he says he is. He wants to prove that, like, that his reputation is, still strong, that he is the top G, that he is like a warrior, right? And he lost the fight. Well, he lost the fight, and honestly, I'll be real, right? I'll be 100% honest. Before the fight, I was like, oh, if he loses, his reputation's ruined. Everything he says about himself is a lie. I said that. And you know what? Like, privately, I said that. And I was like, it's not really the case after the fights actually happened. That's not the case. I think if he got completely humiliated, then okay, yeah. But honestly, I feel like now I'm looking back at it, I think I just kind of got tricked because, I'm not really that big into fighting. I think I got tricked by the whole facade of it. But, I'll get into that. He didn't get, fifth and sixth rounds were a little bit painful. Like he took a lot of punches, a lot of big, hard punches to his face. But he never got knocked down, right? No matter how hard the punch was, no matter how many times he got hit in the face and how bruised up and battered up he was, he kept standing up. He kept trying. He kept trying to fight back, although his fight backs ended up being, a little bit poor near the end. But the point is, he never gave up. So that's, I guess, the warrior mentality that you're talking about. He is proving that he still has it. He's 40 years old, which, is he actually 40 years old? I don't know his exact age, but he's up there, right? And Chase is what, in his mid-20s? Something like that. And he's taller, he's bigger, and Tate maybe is a little bit quicker, but the size difference makes a difference, right? Of course, in fighting, it always does, right? But he stayed up. He didn't go down. He didn't get knocked out. He he was fine, right? And it ended up being a decision. Chase ended up winning it, unsurprisingly, because he was just throwing better punches, and that's just how it goes. But the point is, like, he kind of got a little bit messed up near the end, but considering the age difference and the size difference, you have to really kind of put into perspective that's like, yeah, he didn't do bad, right? He didn't do bad, and we might be seeing him in the ring again. I'm not sure what his intentions are, but I'm confident, given who he is as a person. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets in that ring again, because I think he probably wants to win. Obviously, he's a winner, and he proved that he's a warrior, and there's something noble to it. He lost, but he didn't get humiliated. He lost with valor. He lost with honor, and that's, I guess, a mark of a true warrior. You can lose, but you don't get destroyed. You don't get humiliated. You're always in it till the end. You never know what might happen, and that's kind of how I felt watching the fight. Right? That's how I felt. How it was kind of going. I didn't feel like, oh, he was getting destroyed and his ego was getting pummeled in and whatever. No, I didn't think that was the case at all. Although a lot of people are trying to claim that that's the case, I didn't think it was. I thought he actually stayed in it, and he proved he was a warrior by staying strong despite the amount of hard punches he got hit in the face with. And I think there's something respectable and honorable to that. He lost the fight, but I don't think his reputation's completely ruined. He actually is going to do a new podcast today where he's actually going to talk about it. I'm interested. I'm going to tune into it. You should too if you actually want like his actual take on it. But that's my personal opinion. Is that he's actually probably he's looking for more. Obviously, he's not satisfied, but it was a noble effort. He never gave up. And those types of sentiments will probably be echoed in what he talks about today in his future episode. And with fighting, man, honestly, I did get tricked. Like, in that press conference, I thought Chase was this idiot. I thought he was this rude person, and like, oh, Tate's got to beat his head in, type of thing. And then after the fight, they were all like, buddy, and it's like Chase was like crying, and he was like, dude, this guy was an inspiration for me. And then I was like, all right, well, I just kind of got baited, right, by the fighting, thing, because I'm kind of, I don't really know a lot about it. But that's how it works, right? You pretend like you completely hate each other for publicity, and then when it's all over, you're all best friends, right? I didn't really account for that, but I guess that's kind of how it is, and I guess that is the truth of the matter, because fighting is the only sport where you can completely, like, you can pretend like you hate each other, but you're actually best friends, right? You're actually boys. Fighting is the only sport that actually, like boxing and really any different type of one, but it's the only type of sport that actually like does that. If people on a soccer field are mad at each other, they are mad at each other. People are talking crap in press conferences leading up to a soccer game. There's real beef there. This isn't like made up stuff. And then on the field, you'll see, right? I see it many times where like one guy makes a hard tackle, then the other guy gets pissed off at him. This is real anger. So he'll go in even harder on him later in the game. Leave one on him, right? Step a little bit harder on him just to make sure he feels the pain. I see that all the time. Not even just like in live games, but in games I've actually played in where these types of things actually happen. So when it's anger, it's real anger. In boxing, it's not necessarily real anger. I guess sometimes it is. Sometimes it is real beef. But for the most part, and clearly in this situation with Andrew Tate, it wasn't really. It was just to kind of get publicity. And I mean, it worked, right? Obviously it worked. I mean, Andrew Tate, it would have had publicity anyway because of his name. But of course it worked. I don't think he looked like this old man that's past it. I think he looked all right. He looked good. And I think he'll feel he can do better. But I feel like it's still not like a humiliation. It's not the end of the world. It's not his entire reputation being torn to shreds. No, not really. I think it was a little bit more sad that John Cena lost to, this is not boxing, but he lost to Gunther, who's like this guy that like no one really cares about, as his final retiring match in wrestling. I thought that was a little bit more sad. But with this one, with the Tate situation, it really was not that bad, right? And as much as people probably want to paint the narrative, it really wasn't. Tate was still super, super respectable and honorable. And again, he lost in a valor in the midst of the battle, in the war. He lost in an honorable way, not being humiliated by a guy that probably could have humiliated him because, I mean, I don't know what Chase was doing, but he was doing like some weird paw movements. I don't know how to fight. Maybe that's some tactic. I don't know. But he wasn't like, there was a point in the fight where he wasn't really punching. He was just like swiping at him. I don't know. Like, could he have gone harder? Maybe. I don't know. I have no clue, right? I have no clue how these things actually work. But it looked like it was a fair fight. It wasn't too crazy. Only in the end did Chase start to overpower Tate. But that's okay. Tate will be the first to recognize that there's room to improve anywhere in life. And he'll do it for sure. So if he comes back, and I think he will come back, because I think he's got that hunger to win, right? And that's what kind of has got him to where he is now in this level of life that he's reached, because of his drive and just deep desire to be better than everyone else. So that's personally what I think of that. I think, with fighting, a lot of people, they treat a fight like God has already decided the result. And in that fight, it kind of felt that way. It felt that way. Like, Tate's incredible desire and drive and hunger was still not enough to defeat the fact that Chase is bigger and stronger than him, right? So, like, that's just kind of how it is. And Tate will be the first to accept that. But I don't think he's finished. I don't know where he gets this hunger from, because it's like, he could just be done. He could just retire. He could just, be 40 years old and just, chill on a beach with his women and just have millions and millions of dollars continue to come into his bank account because of the stuff he's already set up, right? But he chooses to continue to work as hard as he can. He chooses to do things like get in the ring with someone when he's 40 years old just to test himself. Because it's just I guess it is just the top G mentality. He's just like built different in these ways. It's just like, he just wants more. He's always seeking more. He's always seeking to prove himself, to fortify his reputation. So, fair enough to him, right? That's all I can say to that. It's just fair play, right? Fair play to the guy. And we'll see what happens with him in the future. But I think that, what my opinion of it, I think it makes sense. That's like, he didn't get humiliated. It was a completely honest and honorable loss. He never got knocked down, which proved that he was still in it. I don't know where he gets the drive from, but he does it anyway. And it was a decision loss, but that's okay, because I guess they were best friends to begin with anyway. But it's just like, it's just it's just for the love of the game, I guess. It's the love of the game, and it's just that drive. And, all I can say is just, I tip my hat to him. Kudos, respect, right? Respect. I don't show any disrespect, anything at all. I don't torture his name at all. Not in like the tiniest little amount. Just respect for what he has done. And, while I'm on the topic, I'll say a little section about the Jake Paul fight as well. That one was a little bit crazy. It felt like it was like the apocalypse. It was like Jake felt like he was in there fighting for his life type of thing. It was just so strange, right? Obviously, Anthony Joshua was a crazy good fighter, and he's actual real, professional, probably, one of the greatest right now in the sport. And Jake is like, oh yeah, I'll beat him up, right? But Jake survived, right? He survived the onslaught. He got hit so many times super hard from a guy like Anthony Joshua, who's just a beast. He's an absolute beast. He got hit so many times, but he kept going, right? I mean, he had to grab his leg a couple of times. I haven't seen that. I don't think many people have seen that. But if it works, it works. If it's a tactic that works, it works. And he's able to get back up and keep going. And then, I guess it was one punch too many for him, but he made it all the way to the 6th round. He was able to just keep on moving despite getting completely beat up. And yes, he did get beat up. Like, he didn't really, he had a few moments, but for the most part, it was just, Joshua. It was a matter of when, not if. When the fight would be over, when Joshua would claim his victory. But with Jake Paul, again, like, you have to give him a little bit of credit. You have to give him respect that it's just that fighting spirit, that heart, that he didn't just go down and get knocked out in the first round. Like, he kept fighting. He kept getting up. He kept trying his best. And it didn't work out for him. Joshua broke his jaw. That's kind of, a part of it, right? That's kind of what you're signing up for when you go into a fight like this. But I'm sure he knew exactly what he was getting into. So he managed to stay alive for longer than probably anyone would have ever thought he would have. And even Anthony Joshua in his post-match press conference said the same thing, that like, he's got spirit, right? And it's like, that's crazy. I wouldn't have thought that. But like, that's a class act from him, the way he spoke in the press conference. But it's true that the fact that like one of the best fighters in the world comes up against this YouTuber who just wants to prove himself, I guess. He just wants to show that he can actually do it. And he just endures. He endures. And eventually it's one too many. But you just think about it, it's like, you know what? Again, fair enough, man. Fair enough. He still lost. He still got knocked out. He still got absolutely pummeled. But that's what you can give him the credit, is that everyone was expecting those things to happen. Him getting knocked out, him getting pummeled. But people weren't really expecting him to actually stay alive that long. So fair enough, right? Fair enough. All the same. That's probably like my take for both of the fights. It's just fair enough. Fair enough to the guys that kind of aren't anywhere near as experienced, right? Jake Paul in comparison to Anthony Joshua, definitely not. And Andrew Tate, just because he's been out of the game for so long, that he hasn't done it in, what, a decade since he last did a fight? Something like that, or somewhere close to that amount of time. So fair play to both of them, right? Fair play to both of them. I don't think Andrew wants to be put in the same breath as Jake Paul, which is, fair enough, right? Fair enough. I'd love to see them actually finally get in the ring and do a fight together. That would actually probably be something entertaining and closer, given what I've seen in those two fights a few days ago. So we can see what happens, but I don't think, Jake Paul's definitely not finished. He's going to have to recover a little bit after his jaw's been broken. But Andrew Tate's definitely not finished either. So don't count either of them out, even if it was a kind of publicity stunt, but everyone made a lot of money. That's really why you do it at the end of the day, right? But Tate probably has some extra incentive, and probably Paul does too. But Tate probably, he probably isn't done. That's all I'm saying, is that he is not done. He is far from finished, and he wants to prove that he can actually win a boxing match against a good fighter. At being the age he's at and defying all statistics. That's what he wants to do, right? So that's my take. That is my take on the fights. It's basically, I don't fight. I don't know how to fight. If I got in the ring with any of them, I would get my face pummeled. I'd be done after round one. It wouldn't even be a question. I know, right? I'm not going to sit here and just pretend like, I'm all high and mighty. I can judge these guys for what they do. No, I absolutely cannot. I'd get absolutely destroyed. I'd get destroyed if it was like one of my friends that was fighting me, let alone these professional guys that train hard, like, through it all and have dedicated their lives to this craft. So I'm not in the position to criticize anyone. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. But I actually genuinely don't really have that many criticisms for each and every person that was involved in those fights, given the circumstances that happened, given how they actually played out. I just kind of have to sit here and clap my hands, right? Like, round of applause, tip my cap to them, fair play, right? Well done. And, I'm excited to see what happens in the future for them, because it's definitely entertaining. I'll tell you that much. And that's why you do it, right? It's definitely something entertaining. That's why I'm talking about it, because I guess it's given me much of like this much of an incentive to just, talk about it, give my opinion, share my thoughts. But that's what I would say to that, right? Final point, it's like, dude, I don't know why Tate, I don't know if I'll get demonetized. I don't know if we're still in that stage where you can't even really say Andrew Tate's name without getting banned on YouTube. We'll find out, I guess. I don't really care. But because I've said his name so many times because I'm talking about the fight. But where Tate gets this drive, I have no idea. Because I know in my life, when there's no extra like incentive, like when I don't have to be doing something, you know what I mean? When I don't have to be there, when things aren't that crazy, I won't usually stick with it if it isn't something I truly love doing. Maybe Tate just absolutely loves fighting, but I feel like it is more than that, that he has this extra drive that even when there's no real incentive, there's no real reason for him to be doing it, he still trains as hard as he can and he still gives it his absolute all, like, and gets his face pummeled in a little bit. He, his face was destroyed, obviously. So of course he got punched a lot of times, right? For that to happen. But he didn't have to subject himself to it. He absolutely didn't. He was perfectly fine where he was. But there's this level of like this extra thing that he's trying to go out and do. So again, same thing. I tip my cap to him. It's fair play, right? It's absolutely fair play. Respect. Nothing but respect. I think it's taken a couple of days for me to kind of form these opinions because I don't know, I was kind of questioning things. I was kind of thinking, okay, is Tate really the guy who he says he is? I think he is. I absolutely think he is, considering what just happened. I think that's the greatest way to prove that. The fact that he got punched and stayed up and never went down and took it to the very end to give himself the best chance, even if he lost and even if it wasn't really that close in the end. I think just the mentality aspect of it. You can't really change your age. You can't really change your body, right? Maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, they freaking invent with robotics de-aging or whatever. But for the most part, you really can't. So considering the circumstances, he did absolutely all he could, and he proved that he still has that fighting spirit. And that's really what matters most, I think, more than the actual result of the fight. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys agree with what I'm saying? Am I just like an idiot for absolutely everything I've just said today? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. I'm doing this podcast 365 days. If you enjoyed this one, if you're still here, first of all, thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this one, leave a like, man. Subscribe. Follow the journey, as I'm going to keep doing it every single day until 365 days are up. And if I've grown this podcast into something big, then I'll keep going. But we'll see what happens. So this is episode 78, and it's been a big ride so far, but things have been going great, So if you enjoyed this one, there are many other great episodes that I have already out and many great pieces of content coming in the future. That's also part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this, because it's like, dude, I upload an episode every single day. I can talk about many different things, right? So I'm going to give my take and talk about this because it's a topical thing and it makes sense to just kind of, give my thoughts on it, right? So it's fair enough, right? So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. If I'm just stupid and all these opinions, take them with the smallest grain of salt, because I don't know how to fight. It's, really irrelevant, right? My opinion on this. But I think just to give like a little bit of peace of mind, especially to those that think that Tate, his reputation has been ruined and destroyed because he lost to this guy, I don't think that's necessarily the case. So I think that's also part of the reason why I'm kind of talking about it. So again, thank you for being here. I will see you tomorrow for the next episode. Let me know what you think. And, again, respect, man. Respect.